Just for the benefit of those of you that have had the misfortune of never reading any of my books, or the good fortune, I'll just tell you very briefly what I believe to be true, and I don't have a dogma to sell you, what I personally believe. I believe you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're not your emotions, you're not your sexuality, male or female, you're not the religion you signed up for, you're not any of that stuff. You're an infinite energy inside a body, and I believe that infinite energy had a view of what it was going to be getting into when it came to this earth plane, that you didn't come here by accident, that you didn't just plop into this little baby body and suddenly wake up and there you are in Adelaide thinking, bloody hell, what am I doing here? That you had a vision, that life upon earth is a sacred journey, it was important, and you saw it, and you saw the difficulties, you saw the strengths. I believe that infinite energy inside of you has such perception and such understanding that it knew the quality of your parents, the type of lifestyle, you know, what race, what creed, what color, it had a vision of it. And we all came in with certain weaknesses and certain strengths. And we all came in with different physical bodies. So some of you rented from Rent-A-Dent, and some of you rented from Cadillac Rentals, but whatever you got is whatever you got. And some of you were born incredibly wealthy, and some of you were born piss poor and are still piss poor. And that's what you got. And that infinity inside of you comes to experience this sort of collective consolidation of energy where the whole of that infinity is put inside a physical body for 60, 70, 80 years. And you experience the gravity of this evolution here in order to understand yourself. And part of understanding yourself is to go beyond the fear of leaving the earth plane. That's the number one fear that most people have. You come in to consolidate, to understand, and to step beyond the evolution of the earth plane. You look at our world, and you look at our people, and they are a collective consciousness, which Jung would call the collective unconscious. And say, for example, a country like Australia is one mind, really. It has an identity, what I call in my new book, the tribal wave. And it is the identity and the collective understanding and opinions of the people that hold that nation together. In quantum physics, everything is a wave until you observe it. Once you observe it, it only then becomes a solid particle. So reality is a wave. There is no defined place where reality is. It's just a possibility of a place. Then when you look at a reality, it becomes a particle. So what we're looking at here today isn't here when you close your eyes. It's only here when you open your eyes, and it shifts into position just in time for you to see it. Okay? It's sort of instant theater, instant scenery, and instant movie. Our reality out there, our country, our people, the circumstances of life and so on, are created in the same way. They're not real, they're just opinion. They are whatever reality anybody wants to create. So our tribal people, in this case the Australian people, have an opinion, a collective opinion. And we are all a part of that collective opinion. While your evolution is in the wave, and you're part of the emotion, part of the intellect, part of the national opinion, your radiance, your energy, that etheric oscillation, that glow that you walk in, okay? Because all humans walk in this luminous glow, which is easily visible to the naked eye, easily. All you have to do is train the peripheral perception. That glow is oscillating inside the wave. If you belong to the emotion, if you belong to the intellect, and if you belong to the beliefs and feelings of that nation, you belong to the wave. So the wave oscillates and touches you, and whatever you are oscillates and touches them. And bit by bit, everybody agree what reality is. Okay? What we agree as reality right now is opinion. That's all it ever is. It can never be more than opinion. It can only be an opinion. So, for example, in Australia, they'll tell you that we have an economic crisis. We only have an economic crisis if that's your opinion. If you don't have that opinion, then you don't have an economic crisis. You've got to agree to have it. Follow me? You've got to agree to walk around inside the destiny of this nation. You've got to agree to walk around inside the destiny of this region and the planet. Now, how many of you here, for example, are happy to trog along inside the destiny of the world and trot along wherever the wave might happen to be going? Raise your hands. Right, how many of you don't want to do that? Raise your hands. The rest of you, okay, right. So, it follows that if you do not want to be in the destiny of the tribal wave, and you do not want to be in the destiny of the planet because you're uncertain whether or not their opinion is going to be positive and helpful to you, then at some point you have to diametrically change your mind and become a different opinion. In other words, if you haven't left the wave and changed your mind and developed a brand new and different set of opinions, you will automatically, definitely, absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, go wherever the tribal wave is going. Follow me? It stands to reason, because that's where the automatic pilot is set. So then you've just got to take a moment to look at, well, what does the tribal wave say? And the tribal wave says, these are the opinions that it usually says anyway, most of the tribal wave, because it focuses entirely in the external world, most people don't have an inner world. They have emotions, but emotions are actually part of the external world as well as thoughts, because all emotions come from thoughts in the first place. In other words, you can't have an emotion without first having a thought. So they'll think that's their inner world, but emotions are external. Thoughts are external. Opinions are external. Instincts are external. There isn't any of it, there isn't external, until such time as you rotate out of the 3D, height, breadth, and length kind of world, inside and observe yourself within. At that point, you enter a 4D world, which is external to the tribal wave. The opinion of the tribal wave is an opinion that is laced with an apocalyptic scenario, a crisis. It is part of the ego. The ego or the personality of the nation creates the crisis and sustains the crisis. And all it is ego. Now, the ego, because it is desperate to avoid death, that is one of its great functions in life, it seeks to get out of the wave. And how it seeks to get out of the wave, because first of all, let me just backtrack, it perceives life in the wave as dangerous, quite rightly. And it perceives that the wave is where the ordinary people live, and their destiny is to crash, burn, and die at some point. The ego doesn't want that, so the ego will try to get out of the wave, and the way that it'll do it is by trying to separate itself from the wave. Out there are millions and millions of Australians, Canadians, Americans, Chinese, and Asians, and God knows how many other people around the planet trying to get out of the wave. And the way that the ego tries to get out of the wave is to create the separation between itself and the rest of the people. So it is trying to create the particle by creating a distance, and it does that through status, through importance, through creating a place where the other people are not, so that it can be observed. It knows intuitively that it has to be observed to be a particle. So the ego will automatically expand you and take you out and away, hoping to individualize you, hoping to create for you a destiny that is not the destiny of the wave. And it does that by getting you to buy things. Cars, little houses with picket fences, special this, special that, anything that guarantees status and importance. So as we look at our nations and we look at the way that the media has hyped our nations, we can see that the media has created this idea of importance as status as part of the national religion. Everybody has to be important. Everybody has to have status. Everybody has to have a guarantee. Nobody is allowed to die. Okay? Anybody that doesn't die is a terrible embarrassment to the ego. And if they do die, they'll put it on the evening news. Give you the scores of all those people who didn't make it and died. And Australia is one of the only countries in the world where they report car crashes. I don't know why, because, I travel around all over the world. Most countries do not report car crashes on the evening news. And here they do. And it's not car crashes like, let's say, 50 cars smash each other on the freeway and, 25 people are mangled and his head's rolling in the gutter. No, nothing like that you'd think, well, that is news. They report car crashes in this country where, one person gets done in. So a car mounts the pavement, hits a granny, kills her and a chihuahua, pins them up against the side of Safeways, and that's the evening news. Now, the reason that becomes important is because the ego is not allowed to die. So what's happened to our countries and what's happened to our people is they've bought this particle state, they've bought the ego's version of it, and the ego has expanded our consciousness way out there, always stretching for the particle state, wherein it hopes to achieve immortality. So it'll get you to pay $50,000 to join an exclusive golf club. It'll get you to buy a fancy red car. It'll get you to buy a tiara, whatever it is. It just gets you to try to create immortality through importance and status. The media and the politics of the country, which of course are very much a part of the tribal wave, and it's how tribal opinion is manufactured, they sustain importance and status because it's politically expedient for them to do so. So they tell everybody how incredibly important they are. So then in the end what happens is you create a nation that is constantly expanding outwards, seeking the particle state, seeking importance, seeking status, and fueling the ego and the national ego. Okay, now, at some point, energy comes into it, because in the end, there's only one commodity in this world, and that is energy. Enthusiasm, passion, energy, the doing of things. If you create a parabola of such importance, an outgoing parabola of ego, that is so far out there, and you do not have the energy to sustain that importance, a gap develops, which I describe in my book Affirmations as variance. And variance is the difference between what is true, what is real, what is holy, what is correct, and what is sustainable, which is in here, and the image that you have to sustain, whether you're an individual or a nation. The projection that you keep up, the PR image, the debt, the stuff that you have to do to sustain the ego and keep it happy. When there's a huge gap between what is real and what is true, and what you have to sustain out there, then there begins to become a tremendous deficit of oscillation in there, where your power is inner, all power is inner, and you have projected yourself so far outer that you begin to deteriorate. So you begin to lose control, things get stuffed up, the stuff doesn't show up, things that go wrong, the people that are supposed to pay you don't pay you, debts, the bank doesn't roll over the bloody debt, and so on and so forth, and a bunch of things start going wrong. The ego, when expanding outwards, doesn't care if it has enough energy to create this external parabola or not. So when it doesn't have enough energy to keep moving you outwards, what it actually does is burns your physical body. Eats it. Literally eats it. Which is sort of funny, because on the one hand, the ego's function is to keep you alive, and the second thing is it will eat you for importance because it thinks that the particle state is how it will become immortal, or achieve immortality, or at least avoid death as best as possible. But it actually eats your body. Okay, so then if you take it on a national level, and you can see how they create exactly the same thing in the nation. The national ego says everybody has to be incredibly important and special. And the people who do not have energy, that have zero energy, the sort of amoeba in the puddle kind of energy, okay? Those people will be given money to become important. They will be given status. We do not have a crisis in this country of the economy. We only have a crisis of importance. Because we've got more important people than we've got money to sustain. That's all we've got. It's a crisis of importance, nothing else. I'm telling you. So, just to give you an example of the Australian scenario, which is absolutely no different to anybody else's scenario, there are 4.2 million Australians that live off what I call the nipple, government handouts. 4.2, okay? Including 1.25 of them are supposedly disabled. Now, I've been in Australia many, many times, and every so often, yes, you see a handicapped person walking around in a wheelchair, but I've never seen 1.25 million of them. But most of them are obviously not paraplegic and quadriplegics and seriously disabled. Most of them have sort of repetitive work syndrome. But anyway, there's 1.25 million of them. Anyway, it tots up to 4.2 million Australians that get their money free of charge every week from the government. There's 1.7 million Australians that work for the government or the state or various branches of the state. So that tots up to very close to 6 million Australians. Then there's a bunch of students that are on Austudy, and then there's a sort of a rat bag of other people. I don't mean rat bag in a derogatory sense, but there's a sort of a jumble of others. They get bits and bobs and special help in one kind or another and sheltered work and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it all tots up to getting on somewhere between 6.5 and 7 million Australians either get the money from the nipple or they work for the nipple and then get the money from the nipple. Now, there's 9 million workers in Australia, 1 million are out of work, and the 1 million that are out of work are part of the 7 million that are on the nipple. Of the 8 million workers that there are, there's actually only about 4 million people that are actually creating any wealth, that are creating real wealth. Because obviously a government employee can't create any wealth. They've got to take somebody else's wealth. They may be doing a very valuable job and driving a bus and making sure everything's happening, but they can't create wealth. Okay. There's 4 million people in this country that create the wealth. Of those 4 million people, 1 million of the 4 million that are in the free labour market are creators. Now, the creators are vital to a country because they are the powerhouse of energy. That is where the power is, in the creators. Only. Mostly, anyway. Not only, mostly. 1 million are creators. So they're the people that own the little shops, that invest in the businesses, that finance the research, that come up with the ideas. There are 3 million supporters. The supporters are vital, because without them, the creators couldn't create. And some of the supporters are happy to support, and some of the supporters are assisting the creators, because later on they will become creators. They're learning the game, and they'll rise up to be creators later. But you only have 1 million creators in this country, 6%, okay? 1 million creators has got to sustain all the people on the drip, all the people on the nipple, and the whole bloody country. Now, once you create the country incredibly specially important, it gets incredible drain on the resources. That's why Australia's $200 billion in debt. You only take in $44 billion every year. So those are your wages. Think of it, let's say it's $44,000 the country takes in. About $15 billion is interest payments for the debt that you didn't pay last year. Okay? And 20-something billion is the nipple. And that leaves you like 3 or 4 or 5 billion to run the entire country on. So of course you can't. So 16 billion is borrowed every year. And the 16 billion is just the variance. It's just the ego's deficit. When you create a country where everybody's totally special and totally important and utterly, totally vital, regardless of whether they put out any energy, you have to create a bunch of debt to keep them going. To create that debt, you've got to sell things. And that's why bits and bits and bits and bits and bits of Australia are being sold off to foreigners to keep everybody important. And there's even a system in this country, like in all countries, so I'm not singling Australia out, there's a system in this country that's called, you see, because everybody has to be special, is considered incredibly special, every so often you come upon groups of people that really aren't special. You know, you look at them and you try as hard as you bloody can and you really can't find anything particularly special about them. So they become special under a really quaint system that I call reversed specialness. Now, you may not be familiar with what reverse specialness is because it's one of my own particular idioms or sayings, but reverse specialness is how you make people special when they're not special. And what you do is you get the media to focus on their not special status, right? Their deprived status. And you come along and you say, here's a group of Australians that really aren't special, so therefore they must be incredibly deprived. They don't have houses, they don't have VCRs, they don't have cars, they don't go to Bali, you know, they don't have specialness. So we make them special and observe them not being special, and then they become special through reverse specialness. And then we can appropriate a bunch of money to make sure that they really are special. And that's it. And that's all that's happening. And people say there's a terrible crisis going on. What crisis? What crisis? There isn't a crisis, it's only a crisis of opinion. It's a crisis of importance, and it's a crisis of ego. You can have a national crisis of ego, a state crisis of ego, a bank crisis of ego, you know, where the bank's like hasn't got any money left, and so the ego's expanded the bank up the yin-yang, and the money's not there anymore. Okay? And you can have a personal crisis of ego. Now, at some point, you have to control your ego to get your spirit out, to become real, to have power. Inside the wave, you are diseased with the rest of everybody doing ego, and it's only opinion. So when people say, isn't it terrible? It is if you follow the religion of the ego, which says everything has to be guaranteed, nobody's allowed to die, and everybody's got to be incredibly special. That's all it is. And when they had the election recently, you were offered more of the nipple, right, or more taxes. And you had to make a decision of which one of those horrible choices you fancied. And in the end, everybody went for more importance, because I figured, well, more taxes might reduce their importance, so let's have the nipple. But the problem with it is, that it's all right for us, because that nipple probably won't run dry before we croak. But what about our kids? And what about our kids' kids? And what about when there isn't any buildings in Australia that are actually Australian? You know, what about when nothing happens anymore, because you can't keep cranking debt? There's only 1 million creators in this country, and the country owes 200 billion. The states owe another 50 billion, and there's 10, 15, 20, 30 billion owed among the various utilities and telephone companies and airline companies. How are those 1 million creators going to pay back $280 billion? Given that they've got to pay 20-something odd billion now, moving up to 20 billion in interest every year. It's not possible. So in the end, the economy has to hit the wall. And the name of the game is to not be there when it happens. It's terribly simple, really. You got one or two choices, join up or don't join up. But it's a train, and it's rattling through the night, and it is going towards these buffers. solid metal buffers. And they're pouring champagne and everybody's special. The driver got off about half a dozen stations ago. And all they got in the front is a bunch of egos. It's just ego. It's like a big erection. They want to know how fast the train's going. They stick their pee-pee out the window and say, fix 60 miles an hour. I'm telling you, that's all it is. It's a huge, great big erection playing with itself. And people say, well, it's a male erection, but it's not really, because the women have their own version of ego. I mean, women have got their own version. Women's ego, female ego is covert ego. Men's ego is overt ego, but they're both the same game. They all play the same game. So you have to decide, hey, do you want to be in the opinion or don't you? Do you want to be in the terror? Do you want to be in the uncertainty? Or will you buy the serenity that's right there inside your heart? Will you buy the spirit and disenfranchise the ego? You see, we started this 2,000-year period that just ended, the Piscean Age, and the vision that dominated the Piscean Age was the vision of the Savior on the cross. And just think about that vision for a moment, okay? There is this person that, I don't know if you're religious or not, but as the religions would have us believe, there is this person that died to save you, to fix you, and to handle it for you. So the 2,000 years of the Piscean vision was a vision whereby somebody else would handle it for you. If you were sick, the vision would help you get better. If you didn't have a bicycle, the vision would get it for you. If you weren't well, it would make you better. If you didn't have enough food, the vision would give it to you. It even said so in the prayers. Give us this day our daily bread. It doesn't say give us this day the ability to grow food or build a well or pick futures options. No, bread we want, The vision was a vision of the Savior. So for 2,000 years, our people have looked for something somewhere to fix it for them, to save them. And when the energy of our societies began to ratchet up, moving faster and faster and faster and faster, quicker and quicker, money moving at high speeds, technology, competition, it's going faster and faster and faster. The people that didn't have the energy to make it naturally looked to the Savior. Have that thing. Who's going to fix it for me? Who will take responsibility for the fact that I'm losing my specialness? And that's all we have. And that's all that's happened. And so then in the end what we did was we created a society of victims. And everybody had to sell their victimhood to get the money. So they may not be necessarily that badly victimized, but they've got to make a lot of noise, otherwise they don't get a check. So we got one group of victims that are arguing and bitching in relation to another group of victims, and we have a PR of victims. It's like having an Olympics of victims. So how much anguish can we create, and how much terrible emotion and negative waves can we create? How much disquiet can we create? How much fear can we create? How much anguish can we create? Because there's money in it. And always the victim's problem is that they don't have status. It's not money. You can give them money, but they're still bitching next week. It's status they need. Do you follow me? So then the tribal wave begins to feel this terrible disquiet and this terrible sense of uncertainty because it knows that it is collapsing. So then it has to externalize the disquiet. It's got to get rid of it somewhere. So one way to get rid of it is obviously try to ignore it, okay? But then the other way to get rid of it is to create some threat or some baddie outside of itself that is creating the problem. So your ego may be right now burning your body to death. But you will explain it to yourself not in those terms. You will say that somebody somewhere is causing you the problem. The economy, the people that work in your corporation, your husband, your wife, the system, something. The lack of capital, the high interest rates. It's nothing to do with you. You have to get it out of yourself and put it over there somewhere. In our society, one of the ways that we are at this moment shifting the disquiet is through the whole ecology scare. Now, I talked about that at length the last time I was here in Adelaide, so I'm not going to talk about it much tonight. But I'll run through 2 or 3 examples for the benefit of people that haven't heard it, just so that you understand it, okay? Now, imagine this. You've got this tribal wave. It's oscillating its fear and its emotion and its disquiet. Everybody's got it, and they don't know where to put it. And they're confused. The energy's going faster and faster and faster, and we know at least 5-6 million people aren't up for the energy anyway. Okay? We've now got to get rid of it. Okay, so where are we going to put it? Well, it has to be the ecology that's causing the problem. So we create dirty air. It's got to be the pollution in the air that's causing all this problem. and causing all these victims and causing everybody to cough. It's got to be dirty air. But when you think about dirty air, what is dirty air? It's an externalization of dirty thoughts. And I don't mean impure or sexual thoughts, I mean confused thoughts. If it isn't dirty air, it must be rising waters. The waters are rising. And we've all seen those TV, shows where the icebergs are melting and the little Polynesian kids are running along. And some somber voice says, in 50 years, these Polynesian kids will be underwater. Why? Because water is an archetypal symbol of emotion. It is common almost to everybody. That's why when you're upset, you will dream tidal waves and that sort of thing. So the waters must be rising, which means why? Because we are being emotionally overwhelmed. Okay? The air must be dirty, and of course it's getting hotter. Global warming, it's hot, isn't it? We all know it's hotter, much hotter now than it used to be. Why? Because we are totally and absolutely restricted by the fact that the ego is killing us off. And the ego of the status quo, which is the government, which is part of the world ego, control the hell out of us. We don't have any freedom. Our spirit hasn't got a bloody chance. So naturally we're going, it's got to be getting hotter. But the fact is that there's a little bit of scientific evidence that rather stuffs all that up. First and foremost, take 2 minutes. One, the seas are not rising. There's only one place you can get water, and that's at the polar caps. NASA photographs the caps 12,000 times a day, 72,000 times a week, 3.5 million times a year. There is absolutely, categorically, no evidence at all, period, full stop, can't argue, none, that the caps are melting. Zero. If the caps aren't melting, the seas cannot be rising. Sorry about it, but they're not. Yes, here the land has fallen and the sea's gone up because the continental plate has shifted. And here the land's gone up and the sea's gone down, but the water is not rising. All right, but we definitely know that it's getting hotter. Unfortunately, if you track the climate of our planet, there's absolutely no, zero, period, full stop evidence to say that it's getting any hotter. And there's a whole body of evidence that comes from people like Robert Newell from MIT, and from people at NASA, and Michaels at the University of Virginia, and a slew of other people, that in fact our planet is slightly cooling. Now, we've all heard, haven't we, how the rotten old Brazilians are knocking down the rainforest, and sooner or later we're going to run out of oxygen, right? There's hardly anybody here that hasn't heard that story, right? And we all believe that oxygen comes from Brazil. So you take a deep breath, made in Brazil, right? There isn't anybody here that hasn't bought it. I've bought it. People told me that. Why would I disagree with them? What do I know about Brazilian oxygen? Is it true? No. Absolutely not true at all. It's not scientifically correct by 50 miles. Oxygen comes from the sea. Like in SEA, the same sea that isn't going up and down. Okay? It comes from the microorganisms that live in the sea. That is where 70% of the world's oxygen comes from. So you could cut down all of the Amazon and make it into a bloody great big concrete parking lot and put up a 7-Eleven every mile, and we would all be breathing perfectly. Now you might say, well, Stewie, we don't want to do that. And I would agree with you. Hey, let's keep the forest. I'm happy with the forest. I'm delighted. But it's nothing to do with oxygen. Now, the last one, just for fun, and there's 100 of these, but let me give you one more word. It's absolutely lovely. They tell you that the ozone layer is being destroyed because of the CFCs. Okay? Wait till you're going to love this one. It takes 50 years for CFC to get from your foot to up there. So, if the ozone layer is created by the CFCs that are coming out of our refrigerators, one of two things is possible. We're looking at a hole that is a result of stuff that happened in 1943. So either we're in bloody terrible lot of trouble when the rest of the CFCs get up there, or there's something wrong with the theory. What they don't tell you is that one volcanic eruption, a decent one, like a Krakatoa, a Mount St. Helens, that kind of thing, one volcanic eruption, is equal in CFCs to 700 years of industrial production. 700 years. So we can scrap all our refrigerators, get rid of all the CFCs, and be sitting there with all this hot chocolate and also ice creams. And if one bloody volcano goes up somewhere, the whole theory's stuffed. They'll tell you that car emissions make temperature rise. Okay, the greenhouse effect. Okay, nobody's arguing that car emissions have gone up. That's definitely correct, scientifically correct. There is, you're not going to believe this, There is absolutely zero, none, no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the idea that trace gases increase the world's temperature. None. I mean, that's astounding, isn't it? We even have environmental gases, environmental taxes now. None. There is no evidence, no scientific evidence. There's not one person who can bring me a shred of scientific evidence that absolutely proves that trace gases creates temperature to rise. Why? Because the thing that creates the most of the greenhouse effect is water. And when the temperature does go up, if and when you have a hot day, more water is given off. When more water is given off, you create more clouds, and the Earth automatically balances itself and gets cooler again. There is no evidence. Absolutely none. But nobody will believe you. Why? Because we're in the tribal wave. We've got to have global warming. We've got to have confusion. We've got to have rising waters, and we've got to have these CFCs bouncing up and down. We need them. It's piffle. It's absolute piffle. But we get inside that wave and we buy the emotion. And how many of you haven't walked along the road and thought, God, what's happening to my planet? You know, what's happening to my life? How are we going to make it? You know, we're running out of dolphins. There's no shortage of dolphins. There's more dolphins now than there used to be. You can all go back to eating tuna if you really want to. Personally, I don't, because it's about the nearest thing to cat food as you can imagine. But if you like tuna, eat it. It's piffle. It's absolute piffle. But we buy it, you see, and we buy the opinion, and you will never, sad but true, you will never become free if you can't get out of the opinion, if you can't get out of the tribal wave. You can stay in the tribal wave and you can just try hard. Okay? And really push and shove and you might become a millionaire. You may already be a millionaire. Yes, you can do it. But that is the strugglesome way of going through life. But I know that that's the way the wave likes it. And we believe in struggle, don't we? We believe in anguish. We like battlers, the great Aussie battler. This country, one of the things that amazes me about Australia is that this is one of the countries where they really believe in pain as heroism. They like it. And it amazes me, for example, that you have a national day off for your greatest military defeat. You know? Not that the Diggers and the Anzacs and all that weren't incredibly heroic, poor bastards, but you imagine how little they understood life if they would trot off on the wave to get shot like that. But the Anzac spirit is very much a part of the Australian psyche. And it's like, how do I create pain for myself rather than create energy? Because if you can create enough pain, at least people will sympathize you, they will observe you to be special because you've endured pain, and then you can particularize your destiny, hopefully, because now they've observed you as being a special little Anzac. Okay? But that's how most people go through life, head first, to create as much pain as possible. So they think, right, I can't get out of the wave, I haven't got any perception, I don't know which way to go, so obviously straight ahead towards the muck and the bullets would be the best way. So they get up in the morning, they have a little prayer, the Saviour hasn't sent them any money today, so that's a tough start, and they look at reality and it's right there, solid, absolutely solid, and they believe it. They believe in the opinion, they believe in the reality. They don't know what to do, so they think, right, I've got to be heroic and I've got to be seen to be doing something. So they head off, and they head off straight head first. And reality shifts a little bit, and they say, I think I'm making a bit of progress, mate. And then they come back from work, and the wife says, have you had a nice day? Marvellous, I'm ready for tomorrow now. And what's your strategy for tomorrow, darling? Much the same. Oh, good idea. Maybe I'll get a job and do the same. Yes, here, come and practice, you know? And you watch them doing that, and you think, bloody idiot. Now, there's people that become millionaires doing that. Millionaires. But it's a sad way of going about life, because if you will come back even a little bit, you can see that you can walk around reality. That you don't have to be in the motion, you don't have to be in the lack, you don't have to be in the nervousness, you don't have to be in the disquiet, you don't have to be in the fear of death, you don't have to be in the perpetual insecurity. You can be free. Every one of you here has the potential of becoming totally free. And money won't buy you freedom, will it? Because money buys you things that you have to look after, insure, and worry about. You know? It gives you gravity. Money creates gravity if you spend it on things. But you can become free. But to become free, you have to be out of the wave. You've got to leave. The problem is that we buy the opinion. So we buy, for example, that, like, death's not okay. So we have an AIDS crisis, right? Global AIDS crisis. Yes, I suppose we do have an AIDS crisis, if that's what you believe. But to have an AIDS crisis, you've got to believe in death, haven't you? Like, you've got to be frightened of death, and you've got to think that death is a no-no. Death is very embarrassing to the ego. So it doesn't like death. So people will go on and on and on about these poor people that have contracted AIDS. But you've got to agree with death. If you don't agree with death, what difference does it make? Everybody's got to die something. Do you follow me? And if you agree with if you make a pact with your own death and make it a little mate, rather than it being an antagonistic force that is constantly moving you around, it can become an ally and a friend. But you've got to agree that dying's okay. You know, you've got to agree that dying's okay. And you've got to agree that it's no big deal. If you have an out-of-body experience, one thing that you'll notice is that as you roll out of your body, and that glow, part of it rolls out with you, that radiance, the etheric web, that etheric web is less than 2 ounces in weight. You'll never experience more freedom than that moment when you're out of this physical thing. I mean, just waking up every morning and have to schlep 150 kilos around is a big imposition. You know? Dying's a groove, but our society doesn't agree with that. So we will spend millions and billions of money on all these incredibly special, important people making sure they don't die. We'll plug them into our lungs, we'll give them a new heart, new breast, new legs, new brain, you know, get them on everything, oxygen, just keep these corpses alive, just as long as they don't fuck us up and die. God knows how many millions we spend on these people. I mean, it's so impolite, isn't it, when you think about it? Keeping them all alive, you don't know. I mean, God might be expecting them back on time. You know? And here we are. We spend billions on them, keeping them alive. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. It's all ego. You can't let them die. What you've got to do is become a friend with your death. Talk to it like it's a person. And say, listen, my little mate, come with me. Stand here. And let's go through life. Rather than you being between me and life, be along my side and help me. Help me watch, yes, keep me safe, keep me noticing, keep me perceptive. But let's move through life out of the wave and out of the fear. Because there isn't any death. It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion of the ego. You can't die. You'll never be more alive than the minute you conk out. I'd give you my personal guarantee. I wouldn't lie to you. I promise you I wouldn't lie to you. It's just not my way. You'll never be more alive than the minute you conk out. And people say, well, Stu, yeah, but okay, all right, so well, let's say we don't die. What about pain? Forget it. With the kind of technology we've got today, there isn't any pain. It's been eliminated as unpleasant to the ego. Not allowed, no pain. I went to visit a hospital recently where my father-in-law had a little operation. And I went to see this gentleman, and he's a lovely man, and he was sitting there in the bed, smiling, grinning, angelic-looking, peaceful, 3 meals of jelly a day or whatever they were giving him. I said to him, how are you feeling? He says, marvellous. And I thought, crikey, he's gone through this terrible operation and all these cuts and all of that. And then just I cast across to this sort of pole by his bed. And there's a 4-litre bag of morphine there. Or maybe it's only 2 litres, but it looked like one of those wine coolers with a little drip coming out. And I thought, isn't it marvellous? They've eliminated pain. The only pain you'll suffer is like, as long as it takes them to get you from wherever you happen to hit the deck to that bag. It comes in gallon drums. You'll feel better there than you do now. A 4-litre bag of morphine and as many as you want to bring another one. There isn't any pain. They've cancelled it. So you don't have to worry about the pain and you don't have to worry about dying. You can become free. And then once you step out of the wave, rather than being in it, you can watch it. You're detached from your emotion and you're detached from the wave's emotion. Once you're out of the wave, you will stop taking life personally. And you don't want to take it personally. Because when you take life personally, everything affects you. Somebody doesn't talk to you right, you feel offended, they don't give you the right seat or the right importance, or they don't give you the right change, or they don't make you special, or they don't do what you're expecting them to do. It's because you take life personally. Seriousness is a manifestation of 2 things. 1, insecurity, and 2, ego. Only people that are incredibly insecure or incredibly up themselves are serious. But you watch everybody at 8 o'clock in the morning all trotting along being serious, and it's horrible. It looks like they've been sitting on a carrot for half an hour. You know, they've got that sort of serious look. And you're watching the Ministry of Silly Walks going along, you think, poor bastards. If only they notice how stupid they look. The point is that you can choose the old vision or the new vision. You can choose the seriousness or you can choose energy. You can choose fear of death, or you can liberate yourself from that and say, death's a groove, and I'm happy to die one day, anytime, I don't care, now, tomorrow, any day. Just as long as I go over in American Express, Visa, and MasterCard plenty, I don't care. And you create a stability inside of you, because you see, in the end, we've got to get everybody out. We've got to get them out. You cannot heal the planet by giving it a Band-Aid. Because then all you do is you create a sustaining victim syndrome. Perpetual victims. And everybody becomes a victim. So they say, well, let's Band-Aid these victims, let's Band-Aid those victims. We can't fix it like that. One, we will crash, burn, and die the good people that are creating the energy and totally pillage the country's wealth. And two, there is absolutely no incentive for anybody to do anything. So you have to come out of the tribal wave, you have to come out of it and create that serenity and create that power and move from opinion into a point of sanctity, a point of serenity inside of yourself. You don't buy the hot air and you don't buy the confusion. How many of you here, very quickly, have had a moment of confusion at any time in the last 6 months? Right. Okay, how many of you here would like me to fix it for you forever? So you cannot experience confusion after this day, henceforth. Okay, those of you that want to stay confused, please put your fingers in your ear. All right. All confusion begins with a question. You cannot be confused if you don't ask questions. You have to ask a question. Shall I, shan't I, will they, won't they? Does he love me, doesn't he love me? Will they pay me, won't they pay me? Shall I go, shall I stay? Am I okay, am I not okay? You know, what's happening, what isn't happening, you've got to have a question first. So if you don't want to be confused, get rid of the questions. Start by getting rid of all of them. Then just give yourself one question a week or something like that, like a diet. Weight loss for the mind. Get rid of the questions. No questions. Just acceptance. A few questions maybe. In a meditation, yes, you think about your life and you plan a bit, but mostly no questions. No verbal diarrhea, no overthinking of life. 0 questions equals 0 confusion. That's it. So it can't be that easy. It is. It's even easier than that. I'm just making it more complicated because I've got to speak for an hour. No questions. People say, what do you know? Nothing. Nothing. I don't know anything. They say, don't you care? You say, yes, I care to know nothing. They say, are you sure? You say, I'm absolutely sure. Don't know? Don't care. The greatest thing that's ever been written anywhere. Don't know? Don't care. What do you think of the government? I try not to think of the government. What do you think of this? Don't know anything about it, and I don't care either. Don't know? Don't care. How will it be? I don't know how it'll be, but my energy's fine now. My energy's going up. I'm perceptive. I'm disciplined. I have strength. I believe in myself. If I'm okay now, it's going to be even better next week. That's what it's going to happen to you. You just got to create a new belief and a new energy. Don't know, don't care. Because you see, once you're detached and once you're out of the wave, there are only 2 things that can happen, ever, in any one given situation. Follow this. It explains life as simply down to 2 equations. In any given situation, one of 2 things can happen. It either will or it won't. That's it. So they'll either show up or they won't show up. They'll either pay you or they won't pay you. When you go out in the parking lot, your car may be there. It either will be there or it won't be there. If it isn't there, you can sit, shrug, and go, they've come for the car. That's it. Then one of 2 things can happen. You're either going to walk home or you're not going to walk home. Either your husband loves you or he doesn't love you. Either he's having an affair or he's not having an affair. If he's having an affair, you've got 1 or 2 options. Bring him home, forgive him, wash him down, scrub him with carbolic, slap him on the wrist, and tell him not to do it again. Or if that's not your choice, chuck him out of the house and get rid of him and find another one. It's so simple. You're either going to make it or you're not going to make it. You're either going to be there or you're not going to be there. You're either going to get wet or you're not going to get wet. It's so simple. So I don't like getting wet. I said, why? It doesn't bother you to have a shower every day. Why would you worry about getting wet? See, if you're worried about getting wet, put on all your best clothes, those little shoes that absolutely are bound to get spoiled in the rain, right? The little tiara that's going to go rusty. Wait for an absolute downpour and head out. Mumbling. Don't know, don't care. And you just keep walking in the rain until you got the message. Doesn't matter how long it takes you. Until you got the message. People say, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? You go mad, you say, no, I'm just practicing little metaphysics, reverse psychology. Don't care. It's so simple. But people, you invest so much energy in your opinions, and look, I'm not trying to bash you up, because I'm happy for you to be any way you want. But if you invest so much energy and so much seriousness and so much importance in your opinions, it's stuff that you've got to carry. You've got to haul it around. Whereas if you come out and you're adaptable, you flow, you have better perception, you know where to go, you know where everybody's going to go, because they're like lemmings, right? It's not hard to work out where the bloody winning post is. You know, you just got to trot up the end gradually. You come out of a sense of serenity, a sense of infinity, you've got all the time in the world, and you accept. Okay, if you're really pissed off about losing your car, sure, you can set up on a plan of action to get your car back, maybe. You know, if it really bothers you. Or you can agree to lose it. How many of you felt angry in the last 6 months at any one given moment? There you go. How many of you would like me to fix it for you forever? Yeah? Right, anger. All anger comes primarily, first and foremost, from a sense of loss. A loss of importance, a loss of status, a loss of guarantee, a loss of financial benefit, a loss of security, a loss of health, a loss of sexual potency, a loss of whatever. It's always loss that makes you angry. So when you're angry, there will be something that you perceive that you've lost, that you feel you may lose, and you may not have lost anything particular, but you're just playing that you might lose it. You lost the key to the executive toilet, whatever it was, right? You lost an opportunity to be promoted, you lost a sale or whatever. You lost your status, you lost your importance, you lost your honor, whatever. First, you identify what it is you think you've lost that's making you angry, okay? Then, the second half of this, which is even easier, you agree to lose it. So you sit there and you step to one side of this person and you talk to them, her, him, and you tell them, hey, we're happy to lose this thing. And you release whatever it is you lost. And now all of a sudden you're not angry anymore. But you say, oh, but I haven't got what it is I lost. Sure, you haven't got it, but you've released it. So that way, you identify the loss, which is 50% of all anger, and second part of the 50% is to agree to lose it. So you haven't got it, so you don't have to worry about it. So it helps you. Now, most of the time when you lose things, it's actually the universe, the universal laws are assisting you to get lighter. Because most of you have so many encumbrances, you can hardly waddle up the street. And if you can't get up out of your chair, and I know this sounds a bit sort of dramatic, but it's more or less true. If you can't get up out of your chair and making no phone calls whatsoever, leave this place forever and never return to Adelaide or Australia for the rest of your life, you're not free. You're not truly free. If you can't do it. You may say, I don't want to. Yeah, fair enough. But if you can't do it, because you have boxed yourself in and you've got the little picket fence and you're trotting up and down getting a mortgage so your particle state will be guaranteed with this picket fence. It's nonsense. The status quo controls you. The ego controls you. It controls you through fear, and it controls you by selling you importance. So they give you a house, you put 10,000 down, you trot back and forth. When you're 65, you finally get the house, it's yours, and you drop dead. Then they sell the house to somebody else. They put 10,000 down, they run back and forth. And in the end, all you got is a funny little house, a little brick house with a few things around the front and a bloody gnome in the garden. And people say, I feel secure. You kidding? How can you feel secure with that gnome looking at you every day? I mean, surely that creates a certain amount of disquiet, doesn't it? Wouldn't me. But you've got to think about whether that's what you want, because everything you acquire, you've got to look after. Do you want to be free, or do you want to be trotting back and forth buying bricks? It's nonsense, isn't it? Now, some of you might say, yes, sir, that's what I really want in life. I want the little bricks, the flying ducks, and the little white curtains and a gnome. Fair enough, go and have it. I'm not telling you don't do it. But if it makes a prison, you don't want it. What you want to be is free. And yet we sucker everybody through importance and through status into rushing back and forth and killing themselves. And everybody's rushing around like frenzy, trying to, that's the ones that are bothering to rush around, the 7 million that aren't rushing, they're over here. But the others are rushing like crazy, doing things. And you get so hyped into doing that you lose touch with yourself. We're human beings. We're human beings. We're not human doings. We're human beings. We came to be. We came to be. If you wind up doing so much you forget to be, You miss the serenity, you miss the infinity, and you miss 95% of the perception. And perception is vital to make your life simple. So rather than going around searching, whacking your head up against it, hoping to get it, you perceive what it is you got to do. When you control your ego, you perceive instantaneously. When you control your ego, you sell double amount of product and double amount of whatever it is you're selling than you did before. Because when your ego is not bashing up against the buyer's ego, they feel secure. Nobody will give you their money if they don't feel secure. So the trick to selling anything is to subjugate your ego and place it underneath the potential buyer's ego. Why? Because when you put it underneath, you support them, they feel more secure, more infinite, more likely to survive. And all you have to do then is offer them the information that they need to make the decision, which is basically to buy your product. But to subjugate your ego is how you wind up supporting the world. And that is how you wind up loving them. So if you're a sales manager, the first thing you want to do is get all your salesmen into the office tomorrow and whack their erection with a little ruler. Right? Say, listen, boys, we're going to put our PP back in our pockets and get the sales chart up, rather than the rest of it up. And you teach them how to be humble and how to subjugate themselves to the buyers. So the salesman doesn't sit there and talk about his fishing trip. He talks about the buyer's fishing trip. Always moving the buyer through asking questions to the point where the buyer has to make a decision to buy the product. The problem with most salesmen is they come at you with this erection like bloody Lancelot, and you can't even see the product because you're watching this thing go back and forth. Well, you've seen it. I'm sure it's happened to you, ladies and gentlemen. You know, where you've gone into a car yard and you want to get a car, and you've already made up your mind to buy it. And then this fellow shows up in his polyester suit and starts giving you all the dialogue. And in him leaning and pushing against you, you start to back off, don't you? And you walk out the car yard. You were ready to buy it until he started trying to sell it to you. In leaning into life, it moves away from you. Your reality, when you yearn for it, when you lean against it emotionally, hops up the road in front of you. It is like our universe. You cannot fly from any point in the universe to the outside of it. You can't. There's an event horizon that you cannot cross. It's constantly expanding. You can't get to the edge of the universe. And you have an event horizon that is the reality and the opinions that you believe in. And as you go out and search emotionally for those things that you want, struggling and yearning and whacking your head against them, they automatically retreat away from you. And that's why many of you have got so close to closing that final deal, so close to making that $30,000, so close to turning that profit, so close to selling that house. And at the day that the deal was supposed to happen, it just retreated one more step. By leaning. As you lean into reality, it moves away from you. When you are serene and out of the wave, it comes towards you. Think of this. I'm pushing against you, I'm leaning, and I'm making you move away because I'm desiring, I'm yearning, I'm pushing. The minute I rotate out of the 3D world, and I'm facing inwards into the 4D world, okay, now my focus is inwards, into the serenity of things, in the silence. I'm totally serene, I have no opinions, and suddenly the reality that I was pushing out here, the external reality, starts coming back towards me and gets closer. So my hopes and dreams get closer by the very fact that I'm looking in the opposite direction. And all that most of you have been doing is looking the wrong way. And that's your only problem in life. By leaning in, you push it. And you push it away from you. So the name of the game is to take the discipline, to become controlled, to begin to create that serenity inside of you, and to begin to know that there is only energy there. You can manifest anything you want. But you've got to be able to sustain it as an energy within you. To sustain it, to go beyond the fear, to go beyond the security, to go beyond all of the nonsense that people tell you that you've got to have, and create the calm, to create a true and proper and holy person. A person that is made whole by their integrity and their truthfulness, by their perception of that infinity that is in all things. And we'll have to teach that to everybody. Once you leave the ego, you leave most of the fear. Because the primary fear is the fear of death. The insecurity of the ego is the insecurity of death. You leave the ego, you become secure. You leave the ego, you become immortal, infinite, and timeless rather than in time. You leave the ego, there's no more disquiet and confusion. You leave the ego, and all of a sudden, there's calm. You leave the ego, you're no longer in the collective perception, you're in your own personalized perception. You cannot create an evolution for yourself until you leave the wave. You cannot create an individualized evolution for yourself till you leave the wave. You can never be free until you leave the wave, not completely. And you can never touch that absolute divinity that's inside of you until you come out of the wave. So, as all of you have agreed that you don't want to be in the destiny of the world because none of you put your hands up, at some point you've got to make the turn. And all that I would call upon you to do is make the turn. And come to that point of serenity, that place where we were all supposed to be in the end, where we all have to get in the end. A place beyond the trauma. Our people, and when I say our people, I mean the Australian people and all of the people of the world, our people have no vision anymore. The average human, when you talk to them, have no vision. Yes, maybe they're thinking about their superannuation or something in 20 years' time, but they have no real vision. The horizon of our people is like a week, a month, a year. Nobody thinks of 10 years and 20 years. And how many people do you meet that are thinking in terms, let's say, of laying down energy for Australia in 300 years' time or 500 years' time that the children's might experience? Our vision is burnt out. Our vision is the death of the ego at the moment. Our vision is dying. But from that, we have to rise and create another vision, a big vision. A vision that will sustain our people 2,100, 2,300, 2,500, and beyond that. We have to create a big vision for ourselves as we create the death of our own ego, and then we have to create a big vision for our people. Because it's amazing, but people do not have a vision. They have no vision. They never think in terms of anything beyond a couple of 3 years. But somebody somewhere has to liberate everybody out from the domination of the status quo, out from all of this restriction, and generate a new vision. And one day, somewhere, we've got to get them all out. So how do we do that? We have to get ourselves out first, right? We have to turn within, control, and begin to allow that spirit to shine. And then we can go out there and we can get them all. Because that is the only way that we can regenerate the vision of this planet and regenerate our people. And I know that I won't rest in this lifetime anyway, because I'm going to get them. I'm going to go for them all. I may not get them all, but I want every man, woman, and child. And I want them, and I want them now. That's my affirmation. Okay, whether I get them all, I don't know. I think I need you guys to help me, right? But at some point, we've got to get them all, and we have to get ourselves, and we have to remember, you are truly immortal, eternal, universal, and infinite. And there is no limit to anything or any place. You are that spirit, you are that immortality. Beyond all death, beyond pain, beyond all the anguish of the tribal wave, you're beyond it. When you step out and rotate out, then you can start hauling the others out. And we want them. All of them. Every man, woman, and child. We want them, and we want them now. Thank you. Thank you very much.